put the carburetor bolts in. 1, 2. Again, on these, you want exceptionally light torque. Looks pretty good to me. Bring the impulse line up here. Impulse line is now attached. Now we can start rebuilding the rest of this whole thing here. Air scoop is on. Let's put the flywheel home. Don't really need to check the timing. I've already done that, so I can put the flywheel on because I don't need to stick the degree wheel back on this. On the flywheel nut, again, blue Loctite. Not something you want coming off. Washer goes in, nut goes on. And I need torque wrench for this. Set to 13 foot-pounds. And really what I want is, I want to do the piston stop here. In order to get this to not move, then I am cinching this down. 13 foot-pounds. Double check on my setting. That's it. 13 foot-pounds. This moves nicely up and down. Good there. I'm not taking the oiler apart on this one just because I don't seem to need to. Two bolts on that should be fairly self-explanatory. What I will do is put the rest of the parts here on. The oiler pinion. Now the problem with sticking, let's see, the clutch should go on without too much trouble. But if this chain brake has not been set, then, or if the spring has not been relieved, then getting the clutch drum on is not going to be possible. Hello. So when I put the clutch back on, I put it down. I don't tighten this that much. I just don't. no real need to make sure that that's tight because it will work its way on anyway as you run the saw. So the fuel line for this tank is suspect. Let's replace it. One of the handiest tools I got lately is the extra long needle nose pliers. Quite handy. And then I can just snip this off, or it'll just come off, and pull this out. Maybe I need to pull it the other way. Here. I'm going to grease up the line here. The other direction. Through it this way. The grease helps considerably. There. So I was worried about this kink here in the fuel line. That's no good. So I'm going to chop this off and not use that fuel line. Let's see what we got here. The rest of this line is fairly squishy and alright. Which means I might be able to use the rest of this to replace this. Measure it out. Make sure to cut it a little bit longer. Then I got to figure out what this green thing here is. Looks like it goes to the tank vent. Blow some WD-40 through it. Just an elbow. That's all that is. I happen to have new pigtail line here. And a new fuel filter. Always nice to have fresh. I'm going to grease this up a little bit. So push the line in pretty good. A little ways. Then you can eventually go in and here, go inside. Grab it and pull. Having this bevel on here is nice for moving it through, but don't need to have the bevel for putting the fuel filter on. Don't know how much I need to leave up top here, so I'll leave that and we'll figure that out later. I'm going to stick a little bit of 515 on the green elbow here. Don't want to clog it. Pops in. put this on. Let's put the gas cap on. Doesn't have to be tight, just don't want dust to get in there. Anything else? I got a sneaky suspicion that putting this thing down is going to be a little harder than I'd like. I'm going to put a rubber bumper on the chassis here. Could have sworn it was here somewhere, but I'll use the spare one. And so what of this do I actually need to bring up and through? Fuel line. Crankcase vent. Both of them come up. So I'm going to put the throttle linkage up and through. So let's see if this works. I actually have some floss threaded through the rubber grommet here. Put some floss through. Double knot. Grease. Let's see if I can pull the throttle linkage through. There it is. Through. Boy, that makes things a whole lot easier. Let's put the green wire through. I think what I'm going to do, I've got the black wire through and the green wire. What I want to do is probably affix that black wire first, because otherwise it's going to be a problem, I think. One of the little screws. Get all the connections made pretty good first, and then we see if we can actually put this down. I am unsure as to why this is so difficult to do. I just slide in rather than be a pain. The rubber bumper gets in the way. Let me just see if I can show that. The rubber bumper in there gets in the way. Don't know if you can see that, but that's kind of where we're at there. And there doesn't seem to be a great way to get around it. So So you can see in there this rubber bumper right here hits the case, and there's no way to move it up and down. If you try to put it in this way, it doesn't work. If you try to put it in this way, which is the way it looks like it should go, it still doesn't want to go. I'm always frustrated with things when they don't want to go. Who designed this so it doesn't want to go? It doesn't make any sense. Who would do that? For want of a tiny amount. I mean, this is just not... The lip here is not big. A couple of millimeters is not hitting, or it's not going in by. Just a couple of millimeters. That's all that we're talking here. So that's sort of over it. But then we run into over here. Hit it. There we go. Hit it. Sorry, that's not a good system. I don't like it. I don't like the old hit it solution. So we're assuming fuel line goes here. Let's bring the throttle linkage up. To back this off a little bit. Just so you can see it really well. The throttle line goes in. Pull. Bring the throttle line down. Linkage is in. Now you're good. A little bit of extra fuel line here, so I'm actually going to want to pull that on through, I think, inside the case. Now we can start affixing the anti-vibe. Machine screw for the anti-vibe. With a fairly large head to it. Throttle linkage is on. I've got one AV mount bolt here. Now let's go after this other one. But really, there needs to be a chain catcher here, and there was not one on this saw. So let's see if I got one. Gonna want a chain catcher here, which I can go over at a later date. But I'll order one. That's on. Not quite kinked now. That's good. Always got to check the lines here, make sure they're not kinked, because that ends up being a problem. Let's try a smaller screwdriver. I'm going to put the chain brake back. This is actually compressed right now. Sorry, this is actually relaxed right now. But as it's relaxed, it grabs. There we go. Now I have to put the bolts in for the cover, the plastic cover. Let's get. So here's the black plastic cover that goes on here, and this sits down there nice. One thing I learned on my last build on the 385 is I broke this. The plastic would not seat, and I just tried to cinch it and it didn't work. It was because this was not in the right spot. But anyway, this has got to sit down before you try to put the bolts in. Short bolts, 4 of them. All going with grease. They probably don't need lots of. That's good for torque. Perfect. Chain brakes ready. There were a few random screws here that go down. I'm not exactly sure what these are for. These are more positioners than anything. You'd think that they'd go into rubber AV mounts, but they don't. Let's put on the exhaust mount. Figure out what bolts go where. 2 short ones. I believe the short ones go actually into the exhaust. Now, if you're going into something that's high temperature, grease is not going to be the ticket. You need anti-seize, the gray stuff. You need this stuff. There we go. And then 2 into the chassis. And at this point I'm kind of guessing, but I think it's these guys. They look like regular 5mm Allens. And I'll use the gray stuff on here too, nothing wrong with that. Don't cinch them down all at once here. Close. Now you can put them down. And then T-handle it. One, 2, 3, 4. Double check. 1, 2, 3, 4. So far, so good. Machine thread to hold the chain brake handle on. I'll put a little grease on this. It's a tiny screw. I'm going to release the spring in that way by doing that, and that way now I can actually get to put the clutch drum on. I actually forgot the needle bearing one day on a job, and I could not figure out why the saw wouldn't idle right. I just couldn't get it to idle right. It would just want to bog and die. Couldn't figure it out. It drove me nuts. And eventually came to the conclusion that, sure enough, the issue was that I forgot the needle bearing. It would just want to bind, and no needle bearing, and the whole thing flops and wants to bind. Washer, E-clip, the E-clips tend to go flying, so you do have to be careful. There we go. Good. And you just keep working the saw like this. You keep finding other things that you need to put on, and eventually the whole thing goes back together. It certainly feels like it will never go back together, but we're almost there. I think at this point I need to order more parts. I need a handle. I need the chain brake handle here. And this necessitates me replacing this, because that's just not safe. Something comes up and hits it, it's just going to break. That's not good. So I wanted to apologize for my poor videography skills before when removing all the lines here. There are actually 2 nipples in here. I don't know what this other one's for, but one of them is for the vent. I believe it's this close one. The vent just goes down literally like that. So the crankcase vent comes up and through and then to there. There's got to be a better way to do that, but the 385 actually has a vent that sticks out this way, the intake. But anyway, I wanted to be very clear as to where these lines go. I don't know what this other nipple here is for. So, at least that's down. Now we have the lines are good. I was just looking at it. Be careful about the line here next to this screw. When you put the top cover down, you don't want to mess that up. I wanted to show something really quick. I wasn't going to take the oiler off, but I did, because I was noticing there was a bit of a leak. So you can see that there's a rubber piece here, and as part of this guy, which I don't know if this is actually easy to remove. It might not be. So, yep, I'll remove it. Release the chain brake, and then this is much easier to work with. But the so this rubber piece here is busted. This should be one piece instead of 2 here. So I'm going to assume that that's where the leak came from, and I need a new piece. essentially. So I'll get a new piece, and the other thing to do is I run a little bit of WD-40 or compressed air through through this brass piece. There is a rubber hose that's in here as well. It's underneath here. One quick tip here, I actually am going to blow this out with compressed air and get all the junk out of here, but if you've removed the oiler, then you've also removed these two bolts and which hold the oiler in. The problem is if you blow junk around here, you're going to blow it into the crankcase, because these two bolts are actually through-hole bolts into the crank. So I put the two bolts there before I blow it out. So again, I'm just going to clean this out, and then I'll show you how to remove the oiler hose there. Here's the brass piece. Here's the new part. Gonna go on there just like that. So now it's installed, ready to go. With a little bit of compressed air, the oiler hose just came loose. So that's this guy here. And off the bat, this thing looks pretty new. I mean, it's a 2012 saw, so would not expect a whole lot of trouble here, but still nice to keep this clean. Oiler hose here seems to be alright. The screen's okay. Little compressed air through it, both ends. It seems to be fine. As long as the hole's clean, we're good. This goes back down and in. Put this metal piece with the washer down and on there too. Put this brass piece back up and through. Obviously, if you had the chain break out, this might be a little easier, but might even go as far as to say if you had the chain break out, this might be a lot easier. Now, we're going to put the oiler down. Oiler's going to go in. I'm going to attach the brass piece. Which of course is going to prove a little more difficult than. Let's try putting the rubber bushing in there first and then putting the brass piece in. The oil pipe here. Yeah, that's going to be the ticket. Eventually it'll make its way all the way in. There we go. And then eventually we can work this. It goes down. Because the bolts are through-hole bolts, I think we're going to want some Loctite on them. Blue on there was already Loctite on these, maybe even from the factory. Either that or somebody put blue Loctite on there, but I don't think so. Willing to bet this was not messed with. be heavy torque on these. Before I put this down totally, I want this rubber piece on there so that it actually fits. So the oil hose is down. Now we just need to cinch up the oiler bolts, and hopefully now we don't have a leak. The washer's in there. The pinion goes down. The pinion doesn't want to move unless the chain brake is pulled back. Okay, now the pinion's gonna pinion goes right down. Now we can put the clutch back on. Two bolts are tight. Clutch is back on. Again, don't want it on super tight. Always check the C clips and make sure they're home. Drum, rim. This is a 3/8 7-pin. And washer and E-clip. This should move freely when the chain brake is released. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.